I've been in real estate for 25 years. I've seen leaky roofs, cracked foundations, furnaces on their last breath. But I've never, not once, watched a dry basement filled with water in real time. Until one spring morning, and it changed the way I look at disclosure forms forever. I'm Jeff Jolliker with Surrett Real Estate, right here in Central Maine. This is crazy but true real estate stories, where I pull real moments from my 25 years in the business and share the lessons that live inside each of them. Today's story involves 9 straight days of rain, a disclosure form that said bone dry, in 15 minutes that changed everything. So here's the setup. It's spring in Maine, and when I say it had been raining, I mean it had been raining for 9 days straight, on and off, but mostly on, and at times torrential downpours. You know that kind of spring rain in Maine, where the ground just gives up trying to absorb it? That's where we were. My buyers had one non-negotiable on their list. Above everything else, schools, location, price, garage, they needed a dry basement because they've been burned before. They knew what a wet basement means: mold, damage, money, headaches. So we had a system. Every house we walked into, and we'd seen about 20 at this point, we started in the basement. Not the kitchen, not the living room, the basement. First thing, every time. That was our deal. So we pull up to this house, and on the disclosure form, right there in writing, it says basement condition, bone dry. Now, I've seen sellers stretch the truth on disclosures. I've seen minor moisture that turned out to be waterfall. But we go downstairs first, like always, and I'll give you the sellers this. It was dry. Concrete floor, no staining, no smell, no white mineral deposits in the walls. Clean. We looked at each other and said, okay, let's see the rest of the house. And the rest of the house? It checked every box, every single one. Layout, bedrooms, yard. My buyers were so excited. They were ready to write an offer right there on the kitchen table. They loved it. We're upstairs maybe 15, 20 minutes total, just walking through, falling in love with the place. Then, I'm looking back at the disclosure. I always do a second pass, and I noticed something. There's a line about a radon mitigation system having been installed. Now, that's not unusual in Maine. We have radon. But I couldn't recall seeing the pipe when we were in the basement, as I was so focused on looking for any signs of moisture. These systems are usually pretty visible. A PVC pipe running from the floor to the exterior. So I said, let's go back down and find that radon pipe before we write anything. So we went back down the stairs, and I stopped about halfway down. In 15 to 20 minutes, the exact time we'd been upstairs, that basement had transformed. Water was actively seeping in along the base of the foundation wall and literally right up through the foundation floor. You could see it rising quickly. The concrete floor that had been dry when we arrived was wet, not damp, wet. The bone-dry basement was filling with water while we stood in the kitchen, talking about the many benefits of the home. I looked at my buyers. They looked at me. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then my buyer said quietly, well, moving on. They didn't write the offer. There was nothing to debate. When you've been searching for a dry basement for months, when that was your one thing, and you watch it fill with water in real time, you don't need a home inspector to tell you what you already know. What struck me most wasn't even the water. It was the disclosure, because the seller's agent asked the right question, and the seller had written bone dry on a legal document. Now, they would have to modify their disclosure. 9 days of straight Maine rain with the water table doing what it was doing, that disclosure was no longer accurate. And here's the thing that bothers me when I tell this story. If we hadn't gone back down to find that radon pipe, my buyers might have made an offer. They might have closed on that house, and they would have found out the hard way after the move-in, after the first big rainstorm, after the boxes were on the floor. Now, here's why the story matters more than ever. Because Maine just changed the rules on exactly this kind of situation. And whether you're buying or selling, you need to know about it. In December 2023, Maine experienced one of its most severe rain events on record. Flooding across Kennebec County and the broader state caused significant property damage. And it forced a very public conversation about what buyers were and weren't being told about the properties they were purchasing. As a result, Maine strengthened its flood and moisture disclosure requirements for residential home sales. Here's what that means in plain language. First, sellers must now disclose known flooding history, including basements. If that basement has flooded before, even once, even seasonally. That is a material fact. It belongs on the disclosure form. Bone dry is a legal statement now, not just an impression. Second, a disclosure is a legal document, not just a casual opinion. When the seller signs the form, they're attesting to its accuracy. Knowingly providing false information on a real estate disclosure is not just a problem for the deal, it can create legal liability after closing. The story I just told you, under today's rules, that disclosure is a much bigger problem than it was then. Third, Maine basements are notoriously complicated. We're talking about a state with high water tables, frost heaves, and underground springs that have been flowing for thousands of years before your house was ever built on top of them. A basement that is perfectly dry in September might be a different story in April. Truthful, specific disclosure protects the seller legally and protects the buyer practically. Fourth, and this one is specifically for the buyers, ask more. Visit in wet conditions if you can. We had a system, basement first, every time. That system saved my buyers from a very expensive mistake. If a dry basement is on your list, visit during or right after a rainstorm. Ask the seller directly, has this ever had moisture issues? How often does the sump pump run? The right questions asked up front can help avoid a big surprise after closing. A sump pump pit that's bone dry, but has rust lines 2 inches up from the bottom, that's a clue. Look for the evidence the house leaves behind, not just what's on the written form. If you're buying or selling in Central Maine and you want someone in your corner who knows where the water goes, give me a call. I'm Jeff Joliker with Surrett Real Estate at eXp Realty, 207-649-6893. Link is in the description. And if you enjoyed this story, there are 25 years of these. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you at the next one.